Hi, I'm Dovid Orlofsky, and welcome to the special Purim edition of the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching on Torah anytime or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, we are so excited to have you along as we approach the Purim holiday, which is going to be a very busy week for a lot of people. For the Daf Yomi people, we're of course making a siyum on the first Masechta Brachos. For a lot of people, that will be finishing their Daf Yomi for another 7.5 years, when they'll once again learn Maseches Brachos, Bo Shabbos, Bo Menucha. This is among certain sectors. For us, of course, Mitzvah Hashem, it should go well, but on what is Purim Day, we will be making a bris for a new grandson who is just born, and Baruch Hashem, Simchas and Simchas. And of course there will be Purim. Guess we should mention that one as well. And for those of us who live in Yerushalayim, Shushan Purim. And I have to tell you that when you live in Yerushalayim, and I'm living here 32 years, your perspective changes dramatically. Because to us, that is Purim. In fact, you don't even realize Purim's going on for the rest of the world. What is Purim for everybody, for us, is nothing. Yeah? It's just, it's a much better day, because I used to remember when I lived in America, you would go from Tainus Esther straight into the Megillah reading, and you were hungry and you had a headache and it was hard to concentrate. Yeah, and now you have a day off to get ready, finish your Shalach Manes, then go to hear the Megillah like a mensch. Of course, in America, they had the Shushan Purim as a day to be able to recover from the ordeal of Purim, and we don't have that, but that's okay. We don't have a Sunday either over here, so as Shadron used to refer to it as the Shabbos Sheni Shogolius. So everything's a trade-off, as my father used to say, right? Before and afterwards. But it certainly means it's a busy week, filled with a lot of excitement in the air. And in honor of this, I have decided to put on my Donald Trump tie, and that is the theme for today. I don't always have a theme. I tell you the truth, my producer usually makes up the name, but I'm giving you the name for today, and that is Make Purim Great Again. Okay, that's my Donald Trump at a rally, going around pointing at people at random. There's a TV show that I have not seen, but I've heard people quote. I think it's called Adam Ruins Everything. I think that's what it's called. Basically, this guy goes and shows you all kinds of things that you thought about and you believed and stuff, and he shows you how the whole thing is a mistake. So the alternative title for this is Rabbi Orlofsky Ruins Everything. So I want to talk about Purim. I want to tell a story that I may have told already, but it definitely bears repetition. One of my daughters was getting married, and the other side asked, "Are you going to put out liquor for the boys?" And I said, "Well, I'll definitely buy a bottle that I'll keep by my side for my friends who come to the chasana and give them a l'chaim. But why would I want to just ply a bunch of yeshiva bachrim with alcohol? Doesn't seem like that's the best way to go." And he said to me, no, the fathers like to do this because then the boys dance more lebedik. And I said, if my future son-in-law doesn't have any friends who want to dance and celebrate at his chasana unless they're drunk, tell them not to come. So the boys brought their own bottles. But I remember it was something that hit me over there. And I got very upset. And I told this over to my son, Yaakov, who in fact was on my last Purim podcast in America. And he said to me, "Abba, you don't get it." And he's right. I don't get it. I'm the first one to admit it. I don't get it. The world has changed, and I have not changed along with it. So I probably mentioned this during my seminary series. I don't know if I did or not. But I used to have 3 rules in my class. There's no talking. There's no cell phones. And there's no gum chewing. And girls would break these rules at their peril because I can be extremely unpleasant when I want to. I know that's hard to believe because I'm such a wonderful person. But, I can get upset sometimes because I only have 3 rules. And I have a different rule. I have a rule that once you've been signed in for attendance, you can go outside, and I don't care if you come to the rest of the class. I don't care if you go to sleep. I prefer you not snore. But, I just have 3 rules. When you're in my class, make sure your cell phone is switched off because when it rings, it's very disturbing to other people. Don't talk because it's disturbing to other people. And don't chew gum. So the girls would always ask about the gum chewing, What's with the gum chewing? And I said, the Queen of England doesn't chew gum. Anybody who's choshev doesn't chew gum. You'll never see them doing something like that. And you're choshev. You don't know it yet. But in this room, you're very choshev, and I expect you to live up to my expectations. And most of the time, in the close to 20 years that I was doing it, there were very few exceptions. And it's such an interesting thing because I always felt like because I set a certain standard, people rose up to it. In fact, one time we got a memo to read to the girls. And I said, I'll read this even though I don't know what they're talking about, but I was asked to read it. No texting during class. Don't talk during class. All kinds of things. And I said, I'll read this and I'll give you a bracha that the other teachers should see you as I do. And it was interesting that in my class, the girls understood that there was a certain standard, and they kept up that standard. I left seminary years ago. It was after my heart attack. And but my daughter was still teaching, still continues to teach in seminaries. And she says to me, Abba, you would not be able to handle it today. It would get you crazy because the world has declined. And people know this. Yeshivas that used to have a particular standard, they took B students, they had to switch to A students just to stay where they were. Because everything is changing. The world is changing. And as I always say, the world has changed and I have not changed along with it. I still share the thoughts and the feelings that I got from my parents and from my rebbeim and the values that I always believed were eternal values, which are not anymore. They're not. I'll give you an example. I'm sure I've brought this example before, but it bears repetition. All the books on chinuch are today worthless because all of the books on chinuch are based on the basic principle that I am the parent, you are the child, I tell you what to do. So now the books on chinuch will tell you how to say it, what to say, etc. But the underlying assumption is gone. When you talk to a kid today, the kid says, no. And you're like, didn't you get the memo? I'm the father, you're the child. This is, no, sorry. And you can't make me. Let's face it. Most of parenting and education is a bluff. We all know that. A teacher says, don't push me because you don't want to see what I'm going to do. That's true. Neither does the teacher because they really have no idea. And very often that's the case. My daughter, who later taught in seminary, when she was younger, she used to tell this joke, this big monster comes. And he says, do you want to see what I can do with my big hairy hand and my big hairy lips? He's like, no, go away. And he comes close and says, you want to see what I can do with my big hairy hand and my big hairy lips? He's like, no, please, And he comes up louder, you get the idea. And finally he goes, okay. And he goes, but there's a certain attitude that we're building things up into a binyan. There's not really anything there. It's a big problem. Don't make me come down there. Or what? Nothing. I just don't feel like walking down there. There's an old Hasidic joke, story. I don't know what it is. I remember hearing the name. I'm terrible with names. I forget them. But he comes into an inn, and he says, I would like a room for the night. He says, do you have any money? He says, no. He says, and you can't stay here. He says, don't make me do what my father did. I was like, oh my gosh, So he goes into the room, and he says, oh, I'll have dinner now, but you don't have any money. Don't make me do what my father did. So they bring him a meal, and he eats, and he goes to his room, and he gets up in the morning, and he says, where's breakfast? Like, but sir, you haven't paid for it. And don't make me do what my father did. So, okay, they bring him breakfast. He finishes. He gets ready to leave. He goes, just tell me, what did your father do? He slept on the street and went hungry. But it sounds a lot more dramatic, So when I was talking about this, and the drinking, so my son says to me, Abba, you don't get it. The world has changed. The world has changed. And it's true about everything. I'm married 37 years. One of the most poignant moments of my life was when I went to the Bedekin. I was being danced down with my father and my father-in-law, surrounded by friends. Yeah. And we're dancing down. The band is playing. I had a really exceptional band. Yeah. And my father, who is very hard to impress, I don't know if I've ever brought that across. He said, I never saw a band like this that never took a break. They were playing the whole time. Anyway, so you're going down to the Bedekin, and there's something so poignant, so beautiful, so special about it. Yeah. Today, people go down. I've seen this. And they pull out a rose. They do a little dance. Why? Because the moment of the Bedekin itself is not meaningful enough. I have to create something artificial in order to be able to make it meaningful, because the thing itself has lost its meaning. So I believe this particular area is nowhere as clear as when it comes to Purim. And I'll explain to you what I mean. Purim used to be, when I talk to people more in my age group, I always use this line. I said, you remember when Purim was fun? And everybody laughs because they know. There was a time when Purim was fun. I don't know that I can give a date to when it died, but it definitely died at some point. But it used to be fun. Yeah. People would put on a clown wig, a little red nose. In Yerushalayim, they buy these Turkish fez that they put on their head. They wear. Sometimes they would put on a funny tie, Okay, so then there were the people who would, put on the full gorilla suit. You know what I mean? Those were the exceptions. And people would drink. They would drink. They'd have a l'chaim, maybe two l'chaims. They'd get a little tipsy, One guy in the yeshiva would get really drunk, and everybody would, he was an idiot. He made an idiot out of himself, and everybody had fun at his expense. Frankly, Jimmy and nobody was like, "Wow, that guy's so cool! Look how wasted he is." Yeah, and there were, a little drinking. People used to make shalach manos. There were no themes. You know any themes? I don't think we had cellophane. We used to bake hamantashen, get a little bottle of wine, put on a piece of fruit maybe. And there were people who did a little bit more elaborate, you know what I mean? They'd make a kugel, they'd make a challah, you know what I mean? And you'd send a little thing. Some people would throw in a little cute thing here and there. And you'd go to the Megillah reading. Kids had groggers, those little party groggers. They go grog, 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 And they'd say Haman, the adults would, bang on the floor a little bit, and the little kids would go grog, 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 grog. And they would go on, and it would, you'd get through the Kriya relatively unscathed. And you'd sit down and you have a Suda, which was essentially a Shabbos Suda. Maybe you had more family. And it's something very special. Now, for me, it's particularly poignant because I grew up out in Long Island. As I mentioned, I did not come from a Shomer Shabbos family. I got from when I was 12. And I had a Rebbe, Rabbi Yaakov Wales Zatzal, who invited the whole class over his house for a Purim Suda. In a neighborhood I'd never heard of before, being a young man from Long Island, called Borough Park. And so my friend's father agreed to drive us in. And he took us to some shul to hear the Megillah. And then we drove. And I was astounded. Because when Jews from Brooklyn, like my father, moved out to Long Island, there wasn't enough room in the car for all of the holidays. So Pesach made it. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur made it. No, that's about it. Purim didn't make the cut. You know? Neither did Shavuos, for example. My father kept sukkahs, but most people did not. You know? And so Purim was like, I don't know if it was anything that I can remember. It was a day off from school, as far as I can remember. So we go to Borough Park, and suddenly I come there, and it's a yontif. Kids are walking around in costumes. People are delivering shalach manas. I mean, I remember we read about this in our little reader in school, but I never saw it before. It was something astounding. And every house was making a Suda. It was like before Yontif. People were cooking. Everything's so exciting. We sat by our Rebbe's table. He starts giving us wine. We never drank wine, you know. It was, here's our Rebbe. He took us outside to dance in the street. You know, it was for sure a life-changing event for me. One of the most dramatic moments of my life, I would have to say, was that first Purim that I really kept. And I've always tried to keep that up for myself. Now, obviously, when I was in yeshivas, it was a whole different experience because I'd have my bachrim of my house, or when I was at NCSY, I'd have NCSYs over my house, and we'd have a Purim Suda. But it was basically, again, a fun meal, people laughing, people talking, etc. What has Purim turned into? You go to Megillah reading. Nobody has those little groggers anymore. People have 6-foot groggers. Grog, 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 grog. Your bones are shaking. People bring air horns. People bring cap guns. And the kids are shooting off their cap guns until the smoke fills the room and you can't breathe. I was once at a wedding. Just goes to show you that great ideas are not always that great. Yeah, they put a box of sparklers on every table. And when the chas and kala came in, they doused the lights and everybody stuck their sparklers into the candle on the table, and the whole room was filled with sparkles. It must have been a great shot. And then the sparklers go out. And one by one, they fill the room with this acrid smoke. And people were dancing and falling by the wayside. I just remember the saxophone player standing outside the door playing because he couldn't breathe. It seemed like such a great idea, you know. And these kids shooting off these cap guns, the smoke fills the room, you can't breathe. You know? And that's already the ones who just have cap guns, and the people coming with like M16s, you know what I mean? Like, AK-47 assault rifles. You know what I mean? It's like the more noise I can make, so the better I am. In general, it always makes you wonder. Right? The purpose of it is to stamp out a mullik. What is a mullik? Yeah, a mullik, as we mentioned last week, is suffik, ambati or seches, tries to cool us off. Do you think that makes for a better Kriyas Megillah? Do you think it makes for a better experience of appreciating the story? No, I don't think so. There was a wonderful cartoon in the Hamodia, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, I'm trying to remember. I have it at home clipped somewhere. And it says Purim 50 years ago. And you see two Yidden with patched jackets, and each one is bringing to the other one a shalach manas with a few homemade treats, and they're exchanging it and they're smiling at each other. It says today. And you see two people in two different rooms talking on their phones. And they're surrounded by these gigantic cellophane-wrapped packages with, pre-bought items. And does it make for a more meaningful Shalach Manos? Does it make for a more meaningful experience? I don't think so. We've lost that magic of it. Or, you have to have a theme, and so the theme everything has to fit into the theme, and so you're not necessarily sending anybody things that they actually want. It just fits in nicely with your theme. Yeah. I remember Mordechai Schmutter had this wonderful column before Purim. It was so funny. I actually saved it. I don't save much, And it was like a Purim play, what goes on Purim. It was hysterically funny. This fellow comes in and he's like, I've got such a headache already, He says, oh, don't worry, I have my after Purim themed Shalach Manos. It's got Tylenol in it and, and Tums and whatever it is, Shalach Manos. That was so funny because, everything has a theme to it. Every year, the kids who were still left in the house are like, what are we going to do for Purim? What are we going to do for a theme? And I said, I have an idea. How about we make the theme Purim? I don't know, bake some Hamantash and get a little bottle of wine. And guess what? They roll their eyes and say, Abba, you don't get it. Nope, I don't get it. I don't get it. Yeah. The only idea they were throwing around that seemed to get any appeal was make Purim great again, which is the inspiration for this podcast, yeah. So get like a red bag, and put Trump-related things in it. But what does that mean? Nobody's worked out that part, Just have everything in the shape of a T. I don't know what it means. But anyway, there's the Shalach Manos used to be something that was so warm, so nice. I was sending you something that was meaningful to me that I wanted to share with you. Yeah. And the drinking is completely out of hand. So one of the highlights of my Purim, which I cannot enjoy anymore, is I used to go to visit with Moshe Shapiro. And I'd sit at the table. And he'd always say to me, "No, Dovid, En l'cha shum kvetch." Anything to complain about? Those of you who have watched this podcast understand the significance. So I said, let me tell you a story. Ramat Eshkol was a changing over neighborhood. It had a lot of older Israelis. It was not meant to be a religious neighborhood. For example, it didn't have any sukkah mirpasot. But young couples, as the community aged, realized they could get themselves an apartment at a good price. And so the neighborhood was in flux and it was starting to change over. So this person says to me, I live in one of these buildings and there are a lot of older secular people who live there. And a neighbor of mine, a yeshiva guy, decided Purim night, he's going to make a masiba for his friends. And they were blasting music, and everyone's loud and drinking. And goes, and I saw the people on the floor keep opening their doors, the older people, and looking down the hallway. They didn't know how to stop this. They had not seen a party like this, and it was very disturbing. So my wife went to knock on the door and tell the wife of this young couple, you're disturbing the other neighbors. And she started screaming at her, mind your own business, don't tell us what to do, a whole thing like this. So this is the story I told Rabbi Moshe, and he got very upset. I'm good at that. And he got very upset. He goes, Tzarich stira? There's no one should give them a patch, he says. He says, first of all, there's no inyan of drinking at night. The drinking is only the day, and it's only part of the Suda. The drinking is only wine. And the drinking, and he used to say this, is drinking is only for people who are over 40, he said. Because the purpose of drinking is nichlas yayin v'yotza sod, and until you're 40, there's nothing inside of you that's worth coming out. I had an addendum, and what does come out is much better if it had stayed inside. Yeah? And but he got very upset. How do you go into Purim and have no consideration for other people? Which brings me to the Tatim. I don't know if they have this experience everywhere in Eretz Yisrael we do. They hire limousines or, horse and carriages or whatever. They have some kind of shtick. And a whole bunch of yeshiva guys come into your house and they sing and they dance and then they ask for money. And they do a whole drunk routine. Some of the guys are drunk. Some of them are throwing up. You give them money, not enough, not this, not that, and they make a whole balagan out of it. I remember one very prominent yeshiva came, and there were a bunch of drunk guys, and they were acting stupid. They asked me for money, and I said, why? There's a bunch of behemoths. Why would I give you money? I said, you're coming in here claiming that you're a yeshiva where people sit and learn. So instead of sitting down like mention, saying over Divrei Torah, and instead of acting like a Ben Torah would act, you act like an idiot, and then you expect me to give you money? And so a couple of the sober guys were like, no, don't pay attention. They're trying to drag him out. He's not going to go. There's a couple of these drunk guys, they're knocking over things, they're spilling things. I said, no, you don't get a dime out of me. I don't give a bunch of drunken animals money. You tell me, they're chachamim, you're b'nei Torah. It gets my family crazy. But when my son used to be at home, the tatam, he'd hear them bang on the door, and he would go outside first, and he would explain to them the rules. If anybody's drunk, don't bring them in. Sit down nicely. Don't try to drag him into a dancing circle. Say over the Torah, you know what I mean? Be polite. Whatever he gives you, say thank you. So the amount of tatam who come around to me have dropped dramatically. So somebody said to me, no, it's fun. I understand that if you're a couple with two little kids, and a bunch of yeshivas come in and dance in your living room, that probably adds to your Purim, And I don't even mind if it's the dancing. But when people act not nicely, it's I don't understand it. What's the message you're trying to give across? That's what Purim is? Act like an animal? Get drunk? How many times have I had people throwing up at my Purim Suda? Yeah. When I was in yeshiva many years ago, I too used to be like one guy get drunk. And Purim was on Friday, and this guy got drunk. Didn't wake up till Motzi Shabbos. And he walks in. He's so proud of himself. Look how much I drank. I said, it's so impressive. Come, Macha Cheshbon. You missed Kiddush D'Oraisa. You missed Ma'ariv, Kriya Shema D'Oraisa. Yeah. You missed the Shabbos Suda. Next day, you missed Kriya Torah. You missed the Hav Torah. You missed Kiddush Shel Yom. You missed Suda Shel Yom plus Shalosh Shudas. You missed Mincha. Wow, what a great mitzvah you did. What a cheshbon. There was one time that here in Yerushalayim, Shushan Purim, it came out on a Friday, and this guy comes to shul, and he's screaming, he's carrying on, just that thing. And he was doing Kabbalah Shabbos, and I guess he was drunk, or he was acting like he was drunk. There's a fine line between those two. And so I finally turned to him and I say, you're in a shul, and this is Shabbos. Stop it. And his friend says, he can't help it, he's drunk. I said, then take him out of here. He doesn't belong in a shul. What is this? What is this, a drunken party? This is shul. This is Aron Kodesh over here. We're davening. If you can't do it, then go outside. To come in here and act like an idiot, that Purim becomes an excuse to act like an idiot? They're doing a Purim spiel in Radin. Chafetz Chaim said, remember, Shmiras HaLashon applies also on Purim. The Purim, I can say whatever I want, do whatever I want. Hefka. That's not what Purim is supposed to be. Purim is this day of such tremendous power of tefillah. I know people spend the whole Purim davening. Kol Poshet Yod. Anyone who puts out their hand, the king will grant your request. And Purim becomes a day for them of tremendous tefillah. I may have mentioned this, I don't know if I did in the last podcast. They have these things called Yeshiva Mordechai Yehudi. they go out and they sit and learn. I asked this to Reb Moshe, and Reb Moshe Shapiro went Purim, and he says, no, that's not the din, that's not the avoda of the day. Yeah? He says there's an inyan of learning something at the Suda, but that's a din in the Suda. Here in Yerushalayim, we have a din to say over some Hilchas Pesach, because it's 30 days before Pesach, when Shushan Purim comes out, obviously, which is also a plug for our special Pesach program that's going to be coming up, second year that we're doing a Pesach program. And so you start learning Hilchas Pesach already, 30 days before. Shloshim Yom Kodem Chag. So that's coming up. So, can I change things? I don't know if I can change things. Well, we can change things. It's very hard to turn back the clock. Time is marching to a conclusion. And someone told me a Hasidic story about, it was Tisha B'Av afternoon and people were going crazy. Some of the Hasidim were going crazy. So they set up this kind of rope trap. And anyone who walked to the base manager, they would pull the rope and the guy would dangle from his ankle, on Tisha B'Av. Anyway, the Rebbe walks in. They didn't realize it was the Rebbe, and they catch him, and he's hanging upside down. And they're like, "Oy vey, it's the Rebbe." They let him down. He goes there on Kodesh and he says, "HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what do you want from these people anymore? They don't understand anything. Just bring Mashiach already. There's no point to this anymore." That was some years ago. And as a wise man once observed, we already hit rock bottom and we started to dig. So let's make Purim great again. Let's make a nice Shalach Manos. It's not crazy. Yeah. That we're going to deliver the people. Let's make a nice Suda with singing and Divrei Torah. Yeah, let's make the Megillah reading something that doesn't become, onerous. Like I say, imagine if you live any place else besides Yerushalayim and you're coming out from a tainus and you're sitting there and these people are making all this terrible noise and all the smoke and everything. I think it's possible to recapture, at least on some level. And Stephen Covey in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People speaks about your circle of influence. You have a circle of influence that includes you. And if you work on yourself, you can expand it out and include more people. And so more people come into your circle of influence because they're drawn to what you're doing. There's an old expression, build a better mousetrap and they'll beat a path to your door. And if we could figure out a way to make Purim something that, once again, is fun, has a certain purity to it, has a certain tamimuskite to it, yeah, without it going crazy. So I think there's a value to that. So that's our hope, that's our prayer, that we're going to make this Purim a really old-time Purim, old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. Give me that old-time religion. It's good enough for me. You can sing that at your Seder. And that's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the show, go to RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can add comments, see my schedule, contact me directly. You can join the online shiurim, Daf Yomi, Mesil Shisharim. If you want to sponsor an episode, go to RabbiOrlofsky.com/sponsor. If you would like to sing the Rabbi Orlofsky theme song at your Purim Suda, you can get the karaoke version at RabbiOrlofsky.com/music. And that's it for this week of Freilich Purim to all of Klal Yisrael. Thank you for listening. I'm Dovid Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. The Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.